All right. Let's go into section 113, 115. What's going on there? By the way, if you'd like to walk through an outline of Kirtland apostasy, I've tried to outline it in like a timeline fashion with hyperlinks to bigger story as you go through. If you just went to my website and you go to topics, and you go to Kirtland, and then you go to Kirtland apostasy, and there's a timeline that has it all. There's kind of a lot of information to keep in your mind all at once when you're teaching, so you're definitely going to need to probably review that before class and just walk through it. Remember about the Kirtland banking failure and what was that again, and when did that happen, and during what time did people have problems with that, and when was the panic, and what? That's a lot of historical stuff, so I always just brush up before I teach that. That's where I go.
You say Kirtland apostasy under topics?
Yeah, you go to topics, then you go to Kirtland. You click on Kirtland. After you click on Kirtland, you go to Kirtland apostasy. That's the timeline you see it. Perfect. So we got the quorum in trouble. We talked about that. That doesn't let up. It does not let up. Let's talk about Kirtland Camp. You've heard of Zion's Camp. You ever heard of Kirtland Camp?
Oh, no.
Oh, shoot. What was this? So March 6th through 8th, 7 presidents of the 70 hold a series of meetings in Kirtland to know what they are to do now, and the Kirtland Camp is organized. By July 6th, there will be a migration of over 500 saints leaving Kirtland because it's no longer safe. That's not where the leadership of the church is. They leave their homes, businesses, land, temple, Kirtland. It's basically a 3-month journey to northern Missouri. Northern Missouri. Now in Missouri, this is something you should know too. Jackson County, so there's all the counties in Missouri. Jackson County, down here, is where the saints got kicked out of, and they went up to Clay County for refuge. All the saints didn't leave Missouri at that time. They stayed up in Clay, and then the government, Missouri legislature, got together. What are we going to do with the Mormons? What are we going to do with the Mormon problem? And they actually created 2 counties for the Mormons. Caldwell County and Daviess County were created specifically for the Mormons to go to. You guys go there. That's yours. All right, stay away from Jackson. So this is Mormon country. So Joseph, so they've already had like a presidency out here. David Whitmer was part of the presidency of Missouri. He was the president of Missouri, and 2 counselors. So now Joseph is moving here. Far west is here. So that's where we're going. That's where Joseph travels to. Joseph and Sidney flee Kirtland, and they'll arrive in far west Missouri mid-March. Here's Joseph's statement about this. A new year dawned upon the church in Kirtland, 1838. In all the bitterness of the spirit of apostate mobocracy, that's how it began, which continued to rage and grow hotter and hotter until Elder Rigdon and myself were obliged to flee from its deadly influence, as did the apostles and prophets of old. On the evening of the 12th of January, about 10 o'clock, we left Kirtland on horseback to escape mob violence, which was about to burst upon us under the color of legal process, to cover the hellish designs of our enemies and to save themselves from the just judgment of the law. So that's what makes him come out here. But Far West, like I said, is already established. There's already lots of members of the church there, but now the call is basically for everyone to come there. Far West is going to now be the center place. Out of the blue, it's not super clear in the history, but all of a sudden, section 113 is right here. What is it? Let's look at it real quick. What is section 113? Kind of, considering all the historical context, it seems a little, out of place. There's no school of the prophets or anything going on. Stephen Harper says, within just a few days of his arrival, probably, that's the best we could do, is probably. The Joseph Smith papers, if you click on the historical, there is no historical button to click down to get a background on this section. There's nothing in the history of the church, just appears right in this, right here, right in this time spot. So a few days after Joseph arrives. Probably it was during an informal meeting with Elias Higbee, because his name's mentioned, as asking a question about Isaiah and others. Joseph clarifies passages. His explanations regarded verses of Isaiah, chapter 11 and 52. They were noted in his scriptory book by Secretary George Robinson, and are recorded in it. You can see 113. So this is like a record of Joseph's explanation in response to some questions that people had about Isaiah. They give him no rest. He shows up to Far West like, Joseph, we've had some questions. I was wondering if you could weigh in, it sounds like, right? Can you weigh in on some things? He says, yeah. So they talk. Q&A on Isaiah. There shall come forth a rod of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. What does that mean? Who is the stem of Jesse? We don't know who asked that, but that's verse 1, right? Who's the stem of Jesse spoken of in that verse? 2, and 3, and 4, and 5 in Isaiah 11. Answer?
It's Christ.
It's Christ. So Joseph Smith says it's Christ. Okay. Well, what's the rod spoken of in the first verse of the 11th chapter of Isaiah that should come out of the stem of Jesse? Oh. So, I'm actually not going to do that. Alright. So here is a rod coming forth out of a stem, or a branch coming out of a stump. This happens sometimes in nature. Like that. You think it's dead, but then it's not dead. And then it comes out just like that. See how that works? So what is that, right? And the answer is, it is a servant in the hands of Christ. It's partly a descendant of Jesse, as well as of Ephraim, or the house of Joseph, on whom there is laid much power. So, like, it kind of goes like this. Now, anciently, my understanding is what they would do is when a rod would grow out like this, the little place where it's attached to the stump, if you cut it out right, it makes a really nice knot. There's a nice knot right there. And then they would make little shepherd staffs out of those. Smooth that over. That's the part that was attached to the tree. And then they use their shepherd staffs. Those staffs were not like those crooks. That's just, no. They were like that. So they would use them as, on the one end of it, they could use gently to move the sheep along. Chop, chop, whatever. This side, they would use it just in case like some wolves showed up. They could just thump them real good with the end of that. You know, they use it as a weapon, so it's like a gentle prodding tool or a protective instrument. So who is this rod? Well, it's a servant in the hands of Christ. So here's Christ, here's his instrument, the instrument in his hands, the rod. Okay. Well, what's the root of Jesse? Spoken of in the 10th verse of the 11th chapter. Here's what it says. In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. Answer. It is a descendant of Jesse, as well as of Joseph, unto whom rightly belongs the priesthood and the keys of the kingdom, for an ensign and for the gathering of my people in the last day. Who is the rod and the root? Sounds like the same person. Who has the lineage to which rightly belongs the priesthood and has received the keys of the kingdom for an ensign and for the gathering of the Lord's people in the last day? Who could this be? He was 17 when Moroni said, let me quote some Isaiah chapter 11. And then he said, that's about to be fulfilled. Just thought you might want to know about that. Nowhere in this section does Joseph say, and that's talking about
This guy.
Bada-boom! No, he doesn't do that, right? You're right. But it's somebody who will receive the keys of the kingdom for an ensign, for the gathering of the Lord's people in latter days. Who's partly descendant of Jesse, partly descendant of Ephraim. Could that guy do? Now, just talking about this, it sounds like the revelation was received prior to this. This is not the revelation itself. This is Q&A, that's what they wrote down. But just talking about it again, getting that back up into the forefront of his mind. Tell me your thoughts just real quick on how do you think Joseph felt about that revelation he had received prior to this, in light of so many people calling him a fallen prophet back in Kirtland. What do you think? Is this refreshing? I imagine this was a great, refreshing conversation. It's good to talk doctrine again. It's fascinating that you should ask about Isaiah 11. You know, flashbacks to Moroni hovering in his room, and then subsequent revelations he's received about what that means. I imagine him feeling some relief and some reassurance about that. I don't know. He doesn't leave a record about this. Just kind of plops it into the history. So, good thoughts. Any thoughts, comments, questions about Isaiah? Or section 113, there's more. That's when in verse 7, 8, 9, 10, that's about Isaiah 52. Getting more about Zion and the priesthood and coming out of obscurity and gathering together. But that's kind of all I would point out there. So maybe the only thing that context does for this is, for me, it's that sense of him discussing this right after, 2 days after having just traveled 900 miles to Missouri, weary, and then these guys start chatting doctrine with him. It was significant enough for him and for those that were there to record it, and eventually gets put into the Doctrine and Covenants. So I think that was refreshing. All right, so Joseph is there. Now it's just sad news. Let's kind of walk through the history. So this is Oliver Cowdery will be excommunicated shortly after that, beginning of April, officially. Part is because he insinuated that Joseph was guilty of adultery. That was part of the charge against him, because of the Fanny Alger episode. Another thing was because he forsook his calling and went to practice law. So he kind of got distracted with that. But there was a few other charges against him, but the insinuation of adultery was the worst. Let's go to section 114. Context. If you can find a picture of David Patton, send it to me, that'd be great. He dies too early. Section 114, he comes to Joseph about a month after Joseph has arrived in Far West. He is interested in knowing the Lord's will for him. Super sorry about what he did in whatever he said to Joseph back in Kirtland that earned him a slap in the face and a kick in the pants. Now he's totally humble and ready to do whatever. Joseph, what does the Lord want from me? That's the context. Very short section. Let's look at it. What does the Lord want from him? The Lord wants in verse 1 for him to settle his business affairs as soon as he can, dispose of his merchandise, that he may perform a mission unto me the next spring, in company with the 12. And verse 2, just a warning. Verily thus saith the Lord, inasmuch as there are those among you who deny my name, others shall be planted in their stead and receive their bishopric. Amen. Bishopric, we probably say the word stewardship today. It's not specific to being a bishop. So, that's section 114. Okay, so I need to go on a mission with the 12 next spring. What's interesting about this section? And the aftermath, you know much about this? Well, there are some problems that happen. This thing called the Missouri-Mormon War breaks out after some Missourians try to stop the Mormons from being able to vote in Gallatin, which they, had the U.S. citizen right to do. They wanted to block them. Then there's this big scuffle. There's some Mormons that were taken hostage. There were 3 of them. There had been a city sieged, and then there was, so this is the place, the Battle of Crooked River. There was a time when it's a battle that goes like this. So let's see, Crooked River, here we are. Someone drew it out for us. So Far West is up here. 3 people, 3 Mormons, have been taken prisoner. And so they organized 3 different groups. David Patton, Charles C. Rich, and something Durfee, can't remember his first name. They break up into they call them columns. And they went to free their fellow Latter-day Saints from bondage. And as they did successfully, as they then turned to go away, there was someone that turned and shot David Patton right in the stomach. He will die shortly after that, and he will never live to fulfill this commission. So the aftermath of section 114 is, it doesn't happen. He never goes on the mission. Gets shot in the stomach and dies. Joseph Smith says this, he gives this tribute to him. Brother David Patton was a very worthy man, beloved by all good men who knew him. He was one of the 12 apostles, and he died as he had lived, a man of God. and strong in the faith of a glorious resurrection, in a world where mobs will have no power or place. One of his last expressions to his wife was, whatever you do else, oh, do not deny the faith. He felt so bad about what he did in Kirtland, I think we talked about this yesterday, that he had actually told Joseph that he had prayed to the Lord and asked him if he could give his life in this cause. And Joseph said, it pains me to hear you say that, David, because a man of your faith just might get what he's asking. Lycurgus Wilson, who wrote his biography, he said, let's see if I have that here. No, I don't have it. Lycurgus Wilson pays him a tribute. I'm trying to remember. Alright, we're going to go get it right now. Actually, I think I might have put it right here. Yeah. Okay. Lycurgus Wilson recorded this after his death, after the death of David Patton. This happened. He gets this, Orson Hyde shares this with Lycurgus Wilson, the biographer, who puts it in the biography. During our apostasy, Orson says, David W. Patton was shot by the enemy. Several days afterwards, while Thomas B. and myself were sitting in a log cabin together in silent meditation, some being smote him, Thomas B. Marsh, on the shoulder, and said with a countenance full of the deepest anxiety and solicitude, Thomas! Thomas, why have you so soon forgotten? Thomas told me it was David W. Patton, with whom he had not long before made a covenant to remain true and faithful to the end. So David comes back from the dead, smacks him on the shoulder, and says, what the heck, right? How have you forgotten? So that interesting little experience from Orson Hyde. Who in your family would you like David Patton to go smack on the shoulder? Is there anybody you would? That's pretty cool. That's called the laying on of hands. All right, section 115. Section 115. Section 115 designates Far West to be the center place, the new center place, the place of refuge from the storm. This is to be a consecrated land unto the Lord. This is to be a place where we build another temple. Temple number 3. What's temple number 1? Jackson County, Missouri. Temple number 2. Kirtland. Temple number 3. Far West. You guys ever been there? Far West? This is how far they got. They laid some cornerstones, and that's as far as they got. So verses 8 through 16 tell us some of the instructions about this. You'll notice that this is verse 8. This is for the gathering together of my saints to worship. Remember, the gathering is about building temples. We talked a little about that yesterday. Let the foundation happen this next summer. Let the beginning be made on the 4th day of July next. From that time forth, let my people labor diligently and build a house to my name. In 1 year from this day, that's April 26th, let them recommence laying the foundation of my house. That date doesn't seem super significant, but just wait, it is. And then, let's see, no more debt for temples. Don't do that, verse 13. Let not my servant Joseph and Hiram get in debt anymore for the building of a house unto my name. But let a house be built unto my name according to the pattern which I will show unto them. Oh, wait a second. That sounds like there's a new pattern in mind. Remember how the Kirtland Temple was given by vision? Say yes?
Yes.
And there was, it came over that saw the interior by vision, and the Lord said, I will give you the pattern. When he says here, I want you to build the Far West Temple after the pattern which I will show you, that sounds like it's a different new pattern. What pattern? Let's just conjecture for a minute. Let's just guess. What pattern do you think it is? Kirtland Temple's purpose was to get the Kirtland keys. He's got those keys. Those keys are to authorize what? What kind of temple? That's right, a full-blown deal, right? So it's likely, this is just, we can only just guess, but it's likely that the Nauvoo temple pattern is the same as what the Far West would have been, or to say that better, Far West would have been what Nauvoo temple becomes, most likely. Because this sounds like there's a different pattern in mind. This is post getting the keys, and we know those keys do in Nauvoo, what kind of temple they built there. So it's very likely that Far West would have been the Nauvoo had things happen differently than they happened. Good. Oh, one more thing. What's significant about this section?
Name of the church.
This is where the Lord first names the church. We're only 8 years into this, and now He names the church. How important do you think it is to the Lord that it's the church has this name?
Important.
It's kind of an 8-year afterthought. I don't know if you know what I mean. Like, I don't know if you want to put too much, like use our full name. I know sometimes we talk about that. Elder Oak says, please use, to journalists he says, please use our full name once, and then after that just say the Church of Jesus Christ. That's fine. What were they called before this?
Church of Christ.
Sometimes Church of Christ, sometimes Church of Jesus Christ, sometimes Church of the Latter-day Saints. This just puts it all in, formalizes it. Church of Jesus Christ, of Latter-day Saints. So, this is not the most important distinguishing feature of the Lord's kingdom on earth, that name. It's more about what's going on in that church and kingdom, right? So please.
We've talked in the last couple of weeks about kind of this progressive nature of Revelation.
Yeah.
Is this kind of maybe another example of the progressive nature of the name of the church being revealed? Because it has gone by these different iterations over those 8 years.
That's a good question. I would say it could be. Could for sure. I don't know for sure. Yeah. Could be. Yeah, good question. There's one final thing in 115 that is significant. So, huge section. Temple number 3, church's name, and then the Lord gives Joseph some reassurance here in 18 and 19. Also, other places should be appointed for stakes in the regions round about, as they shall be manifested unto my servant Joseph from time to time. For behold, I will be with him. I will sanctify him before the people. For unto him have I given the keys of this kingdom and ministry, even so, amen. Again, with all the people calling him fallen prophet, I think those verses were personally powerful and hopefully helpful to saints there in Far West. Okay. Any thoughts, comments, questions about DHC 113 through 115? Some shorties. If not, we will end right there this segment.